we are building the card game called War for the YByte Python curriculum, available at www.ybyte.in. In the previous video, we saw the rules of this game, which is basically an interesting card game. We're going to get started building this, starting with the deck of cards that we'll build in this video. Now, basically, deck of cards will be a list, but let's just see how an actual card deck looks and then see how we can do it in Python. In any playing cards, there are 52 cards, and these are in 4 suits, so say 4 colors. They are called spades, hearts, clubs, and diamonds. They have their very well-defined signs, and in each of these suits we have 13 cards, starting from 2, 3, 10, Jack, Queen, King, and Ace. So the last 4 are basically these pictures, but this is a very standard set of cards that we are quite familiar with. Now notice there are 52 cards in this, 13 times 4. Now the way we are going to do this is, by representing every card in the code as 2 characters. For example, 2 of clubs would be C2, 8 of diamonds would be D8, King of hearts will be HK, 9 of spades would be S9, and so on and so forth. The way, so basically the first character is the suit and second character is the value. And that's how we're going to represent this. And for this purpose, we are going to create 3 lists, one called the cards, one called the suits, and finally one deck of cards. And let's see how we do this. Well, so basically I'm going to create a list called cards, which is all the card values, say starting from 2, 3 until ace. Now here notice I've arranged this in a list in an increasing order of their value. So for example, 4 is clearly more than 2. Likewise, Jack is more than, let's say, 7, and so on and so forth. Also notice that we are using 10 as X, because X is the Roman representation. What that does for us is that every card gets represented by a single character. Similarly, we have a list called suits, which is in this case club, diamond, heart, and spade. So C, D, H, S. Notice these are all strings. Now, one thing very clearly is that we could have done this entire thing in just one step. We could have just given, let's say deck of cards as C2, C3, C4, C5. But as you'll see later, it's actually more convenient to do it this way. The code becomes cleaner. Also later on when we compare cards, for example, C2 to C3 and so on and so forth, it becomes easier if we have these 2 lists separate. So let's see how this gets done. Basically I come in here and I say, okay, look, I need 2 lists. So I'm going to create this list called cards, which is, all the cards, all the values of the cards at 2, 3, say 4, 5, to do it just a little bit slowly. So say 6, say 7, say 8, say 9, X, remember 10 would be seen as X, say J, Q, K. Again, all of these have to be strings, so I do it a little bit slowly, a little bit carefully, and I create another list called suits, and suits is going to be, say C for clubs, D for diamonds, H for hearts, so H for hearts, and S for spades. Now this is the usual order in which it's represented. Now having done these 2 lists, I'm basically going to run a loop over both of these to sort of combine this. In fact, I'll run a nested loop. Let's see this first here. Basically I'm going to say, okay, look, there's another list here which is called deck of cards, an empty list. Now I'm going to populate this list one by one by just running a nested loop over the suits and over the cards. So for every suit I look at all the cards, then I go to the next suit and so on and so forth, and I do that with for loop. This is quite an interesting piece of code. Let's see this working first. So I just go and say, for example, for KK in suits, colon, and say for, say, JJ in, say, cards. And really all I need to do is to say deck, of cards dot append, let's say KK plus JJ. Now notice KK and JJ are both strings, so which means we are just adding these 2 characters like a join apple banana. But for me to be able to use append, I must first define this, deck of cards. So I say deck of cards here is an empty list. Now this is really all I need, because this nested loop will take care of everything else. So when I run this code, for example, the code runs. If I look at deck of cards, notice I've got all the 52 cards. I know basically club of 2, so 2 of club, 3 of club, 4 of club, and so on and so forth. then diamonds, then hearts, and then spades. And if I look at, let's say, length of, let's say, deck, say, of cards, that is 52 length, and that's really because it's, there are, say, 13 cards and there are 4 suits. So, this is logical. 13 times 4 is 52. Now, before I wrap this up, a little bit of compare and contrast is in order. Remember, previously we have done, a double loop, for example, in our pixel art project in Python, where we created this grid of squares using this nested loop, right? So loop inside a loop. In fact, it's very, very similar to what we are doing here, except that previously we used a range function. So that gave us numbers between, say, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3 until, say, in this case, 19. Now we are using a list, and really the concept is very, very similar, even though the output looks quite different. And by the way, both of these are almost exactly the same as what we've done in Scratch when we did this, for example, the brick breaker project, and we put all these bricks in this order. So really, this double loop, this nested loop is really quite versatile, as we are seeing here in action. And do make this connection because it helps you understand what's really going on here. If you think this way of learning programming works for you, it makes you think better, do look at our website, because here at ybyte.in, we learn Python programming through such fun activities. Take care. Thank you so much. Bye bye.